My name's Goffin Carrot. I am predominantly a producer and director in television, but that also includes series directing, series producing, and edit producing, lots of job titles, and I live in London. So first off, what do I do? So the job of a producer-director is, it kind of varies from project to project. Essentially, I work in trying to basically set up what a television program will be. And then on location, as the director, you're the person in charge, although there's usually people above you as well, of deciding how a scene or program is shot. So that's working with the DOP, director of photography, camera person, to decide where cameras are positioned, what shots you need in order to make a scene work. And then in terms of producing, that comes down to being across the content that you're getting from the people involved in the scene, whether that's contributors or whether that's a presenter. I've worked across a lot of different genres of television, mainly factual entertainment, so shows like The Apprentice for BBC One, The Great British Bake Off way back for Series 2, Glow Up for BBC Three, and then more recently I have worked on projects for BBC Three, My Mate's a Muslim. I've worked on Stories of the Songs for Channel 5, which is a music documentary. And at the moment, I'm edit producing Big Zoos, Big Eats for Dave. There's a lot of things I wish I'd known when I started out in my career. The biggest lesson that I always remember when I first started out is the show that I was working on. Someone just mentioned to me not to worry about the length of contracts. So they explained to me that I'll get a 2-week contract, and then another 2-week contract, and then another 2-week contract, and then if I'm lucky, I'll get a month contract or a couple of months contract. And the game is you just have to keep plugging away, which is really daunting and terrifying when you start out, because the idea of having zero job security is horrendous. But once someone explained to me that's just how it works for everyone, and you kind of then take the worry away and you realise that everyone you're working with is in the same position. So it doesn't make it less scary, but at least it makes you realise that everyone's in the same boat. There's lots of other things I wish I'd learnt or wish I knew when I started. So I never quite knew exactly what different job roles were. So the usual editorial job progression, runner, researcher, assistant producer, producer-director, series producer, series director, so on and so forth. I took a while to get to grips with that and know exactly what each job role meant. Because again, that changes on different programs. You can be a researcher on one type of show, and that means you're out directing crews and writing scripts. But on another show, you may just be strictly researching for the script and working to an associate producer or a director. So every different project, the roles somewhat slightly vary. And that's what was sort of hard at the beginning, to get my head around what an actual job role meant and what it entailed. And therefore, when you started on a different project, knowing exactly what would be expected of you if it wasn't laid out from the beginning. I think starting out, I'd have definitely benefited from something like Creative Train, just, I think, in terms of being able to bounce ideas off of people who knew the industry better than I did. So when you first start off, and it continues throughout your career, your friends and your peers are the people mainly at the same level as you, and they're the people that you feel safe talking about what you can and can't do, what you don't understand, where you'd like to go. And I think I'd have definitely benefited early on in my career, and even still in my career, from having mentors that were where I want to be and what I'm doing, the things that I want to do, and being able to have a space where you can get advice and guidance from people and not feel that in some way changes that person's opinion of you. So, I mean, television's very much a game of bluff sometimes, where you're always trying to almost pretend you know more than what you know, good or bad. And I think having a safer space where you can just be very upfront with people and say, I don't know what this means, could you explain it to me, would definitely help. A mistake I've made lots of mistakes throughout my career, ranging from ordering a bucket of maggots to the office to use the next day in a scene and not putting a lid on the bucket and coming in the next morning to find out that the office was now infested with maggots that will live with me till the day I cease. And I can't think of any specific big TV mistakes I've made so forth, but I've forgotten to take tapes to a shoot, which I did very early on. Most of it always comes down to lack of preparation and planning. And I've learnt the hard way, and the way that we always should do is you can't go into anything without prepping and planning and making sure you know every detail. And that's not to say that when you get onto location, you can't vary and differ and sort of roll with how things work. But if you don't have a base level plan to begin with, you will come unstuck very, very quickly. I got into television in a really roundabout way. I studied law and business at university and then decided that wasn't for me. So I took a couple of years out and then managed to get myself on a training scheme with the BBC, with BBC Sport. And so went back to university and did a postgrad diploma in journalism. And as part of the scheme, I was able to have work placements within various BBC roles. And then I was extremely fortunate that I applied for a role that was way above me as a newcomer. But the series producer thankfully took pity on me. And she invited me for an interview, explained to me why the role I was going for was out of my depth, but invited me to stay with the show and if I wanted to do some running for them, which I grabbed hold of. And that was it, really. I started off as a runner, as a junior researcher in children's television, and then just kept on working and worked my way up.